Okay, so in this section we're going to cover off your working space. Basically, you want to set yourself up so that you can braid from something and pull quite strongly on it. So there's a few options here for you, especially if you're doing this at home or in a cafe with some friends or something like that. So the first option is a door handle. You want to make sure you're working on the closed side of the door so it's not going to ping open in your face, and don't forget to tell somebody that you're working on the other side of it. The other option is a table leg. This can work quite well, especially if you're somebody like me who likes to work while sat on the floor on a cushion, and you can get some nice tension off a table leg there. And the other option is a chair. Now, if you're using a chair, if it's not a particularly heavy chair, you might want to ask a friend to sit on the chair for you so that you can really get that tension going from the chair. And what you're going to need to do is get another piece of thread. So it doesn't necessarily have to be your nice embroidery threads, but it can be a piece of your cotton innards or just a general piece of string or twine. And you're going to cut a piece about 30 centimetres in length, and you're going to wrap that round the chair. I'll show you in the next section how we're going to start, and then that is what you're going to pull from to get your tension. In the next little section, I'm going to show you how I set up my working space, so you can copy that if you wish. Now we're going to cover how I like to get my workstation set up. So the first thing I like to do is that you often find your beads and charms tend to roll around everywhere whilst you're making your bracelet. So I get a coaster and I like to add my beads and charms onto the coaster so that they don't go walkabouts whilst I'm crafting. I like to keep my scissors nearby, and then I prep my threads. So if you have one of our kits, now's the time to take your bobbin of threads that I've pre-cut for you in your colours. This is our Tree of Life colours here, and you're going to unwind them now. And then what you're going to do, and this is for everybody, take your cotton thread, your inner piece, and fold in half. Now it's really important to fold that in half, because if you don't, you're going to end up with a wonky bracelet that's fat at the top and thin at the bottom. And the same applies then for your 5 threads of embroidery thread. You want to make sure that they are exactly in half. Otherwise you're going to get to the end and you're not going to have enough threads to tie your knot and your plaited tassel. Then what you're going to do is loop them around a finger, and then over the top, loop over your cotton inner thread, and you're going to have them lined up like so. Then you're ready for the next section, which is where we're going to braid our loop to start off our bracelet. And this is a really fun section. We are going to design our bracelet. There are quite a few different patterns that we can do. So we can do, this is what we call candy stripes. So larger chunks of equal centimetre chunks of the different colours. Then we also have here the crisscross, which looks really cute. It's a really nice way of embellishing and fancying up your bracelet. And then also we have here our stripes. So it's just one thread directly laid next to the next colour to make a very tight and neat stripe. So we have stripes, crisscross, and candy stripes. Now also, as you can see here, I've done some different patterning, placing the chunks of colours in different sections. So you can really mix and match it up. This one's got crisscross, different coloured chunks, and a nicer chunk at the top. So if there's a particular colour in your chosen colourway that you like the most, you can really embellish it in. And if there's a colour that you just want to highlight and use, like I've done here on this one and here, so I've just used this magenta colour to highlight in the different sections. It can look really cute. It's a nice way of doing it. So what you want to do first is draw out really roughly your bracelet, like so. And this is just the fun bit. You get to sketch out how you're going to want your bracelet to look. Now I like to add the crisscross section in the middle, so I'm just going to draw that in. This is a real rough drawing. don't judge me on my drawing. I'm a much better bracelet maker. Then I like to add a little section each side to really frame this crisscross section, a bit like what I've done here. I really like how this looks. Then I'm going to do 2 sections of stripes. Now these drawings you're going to use and just have them by your side, just as a bit of a guide as you're going through, so that you don't get lost as you're going along. But obviously you can always undo it and start again. But this is roughly how I'd like my bracelet to look. There'll be my knot and my tassel. Now I like to add the charms in the middle, like so. Now we'll be covering this section off later on, so you can decide now whether you want to do charms in the middle or charms at the end. But I'm going to put on this one my charm in the middle. Such a funny looking tree, but honestly, this will really help you stay on track and in line with your design as you're going along. Now, if you're making your bracelet for somebody else, have a think at what sort of styles do they like. Do they like more plain or candy stripes, or do they like something a little bit more fancy and busy like this one? And just have a think and design your friendship bracelet with either yourself or your friend that you're sending it to, with them in mind. And you can do a few of these and really play and see what you would like. Hi, so now we are going to look at making our braided loop, and I'm going to hold these up nice and close, hopefully you can see these. Now these are the loops at the top which make the fitting at the end. So we start with the end almost, so we're working backwards. Now there's 2 ways that I'm going to teach you. Some of you, particularly if you've done finger knitting, crochet, other crafts, might prefer option 1. I prefer option 1 too. Or if you're new to this type of working with your hands and dexterity, option 2 might be a better place to start. Another tip, if you are using a bead and you want to use the bead as a form of fastening your bracelet at the end by popping it through the loop, you want to measure your loop size to be able to be the circumference of your bead. So the beads that come in our kits, for example, are 1 centimetre across. So you need to make sure that your loop is at least 1/2 centimetre long, so that when you try to pop the bead through, it's going to work. As you can see, this loop for this bead is too small, it's not going to work. But what I like to do is to fasten the bracelets, take them up to the charm and the beads. That's always another option. So don't worry if you don't make your loop quite big enough to pop the bead through. If that's what you want to do, you can still fasten your bracelet by popping your braided plaited tail through and fastening it that way. Okay, so making sure you have your threads in half like we mentioned in the last video, with your cotton inner all measured up in half, so both ends are matching here, and both of your cotton inners, takes a little bit of fiddling, are lined up there. And we're going to thread them over your finger here like so, and then I'm going to show you what to do. Option 1 of how to make your braided loops for your bracelets. So like I mentioned before, you've got your threads completely in half, including your chunky cotton thread. Now, if you're right-handed, you're going to pinch with your left, and if you're left-handed, you're going to pinch with your right. So then you're working with your most dominant hand. So I'm right-handed, so I'm pinching with the left, holding halfway. Then the colour that you want your loop, you're going to section out from the rest of your thread. So I'm picking this nice dark purple. Then you're going to go over and through and make a simple slip knot, and you're going to pull that through, and you're going to pull it all the way back to where you're pinching, so that finger is holding it roughly around that halfway mark. Now where your finger is pinching is actually the base of your loop. Then with your most dominant hand, so my right hand, you're going to wrap round, so you're wrapping away from you and then pulling it back towards you, and you're keeping it really tight. So it helps to pull this tight, and this thread that you're wrapping with is never being let go. Sometimes I like to go round 2 or 3 times and then just tease the rest out with my hands. And you're wanting your threads to be laid exactly flush next to each other. So no bumps, no gaps, no bulks, so that you have a really nice smooth loop. And this principle is actually one that will carry through for all of our braiding today, is making sure we have no bulks and no gaps. So each thread is being laid exactly flush next to the next one. If you're not sure what I mean by flush, so each thread is being laid directly next to each other, not on top, and no gaps. Now, I like to do roughly a centimetre high loop, which means I need to do 2 centimetre length here. And I think that looks about right. Now, a way to test if you've done this tight enough and flush enough is that if I let go of the left hand, it doesn't flop down, it stays outright. So I know that this has the strength that it needs to last many, many years. If your bracelet, when you let go, flops down like so, you want to go back and just tease it through a bit, make sure those threads are pulled nice and tight. Then you wrap it round your finger to bring both ends next to each other. Let me just show you. So then you're gathering up all the threads in your left hand if you're right-handed, and right hand if you're left-handed. So almost looks like a little rainbow, and you're bringing that final thread round and you're pulling it tight. And don't be afraid, you can't pull it tight enough. So then you want to go round 1, 2, 3, pulling that loop nice and tight again to make sure it's all flush, no bulks and no gaps. Then just how we started with a little slip knot, we'll finish with one. So pinching the top of your loop and the rest of the threads in your dominant hand, you go over and back through with your thread, so the thread that you're using, around everything, the cotton thread and all your coloured embroidery threads, and you pull that really, really tight. If you want, you can give it a little squidge up with your nails just to make sure it's flush. Give it a little wiggle, get it into shape. And then I like to do one more slip knot just to make sure it's really in place. I'm one of those people that one for luck. It doesn't hurt when you're making jewellery just to do an extra knot for luck. Okay, and there we go. Option 1 for how to make your loop. Okay, so welcome to option 2. So we start the same as in option 1. So if you've already seen that, I'm just going to repeat that quickly for those of you who haven't. But if you're left-handed, you want to be holding the threads in the right, and if you're right-handed, you want to be holding them in your left. So you're holding them in your least dominant hand, so you can braid and wrap with your most dominant hand. So you pinch the threads at the halfway point, and that includes your thicker piece of cotton and your embroidery threads. Then in your dominant hand, so I'm right-handed, so that's how I'm demonstrating, you're going to do a slip knot. So over and under all of the threads, and then pull it back through, and then slide that along up to your finger that is pinching at the halfway point. So this point here is the beginning and end of your loop. So from here, you want to braid round once, twice, 3 times. Give it a little squeeze and a pinch, and do one more slip knot just to hold that in place. Now, if you're younger and you're watching this and you're really struggling, this might be the point to ask an adult or creative big sister or brother to come along and help you. But trust me, the rest of it is easy. This is as hard as it gets, is this bit. Now, for this option, what you're going to do is you're going to take some sellotape. So take a little bit of celly, and you're going to lay your threads out on the table, and then you're going to work off the edge of the table. So I'm just going to move this to the edge of the table. Here we go. And you're going to sellotape on the piece of the threads that you're not working from. So you're going to work towards your body. So where you were pinching is where you're going to sellotape the threads to the table. Squish it down nice and tight. Let me see if I can bring this in a little closer for you. And then using that same thread, so the colour that we want our loop to be, you're going to braid around. And it's needing just a little bit of a squidge. And then there we go. You're braiding around, and what's happening is the table here where you've sellotaped is pulling the slack for you, rather than in option 1 I showed you, it was your other hand having to pull, which can be a bit tricky because you're having to do both pulling the tension and wrapping round and keeping it neat all at the same time with just 2 hands. So mine's slipping through a bit. Another option here, some people like to do, is to get somebody to hold here for you. So if you've got somebody they can hold. I know when I make them with my friends and with my team on the stall in Lyme Regis, we all take it in turns to pinch and hold while the other person is braiding off. So I want around a centimetre high loop, which means I need to do about 2 centimetres of braid, which I think I am about there. Now remember, as I said in option 1, the same applies here. We don't want any bulking, so no laying of threads on top of each other. We want them flush side by side. So just make sure that that is happening, and you'll be able to tell because it goes nice and shiny. If it's bulky and gappy, you won't get that shine. So now you want to unpeel from the table. I'll move it back over here for us to see. And we're going to fold our loop around, and we're going to pinch it at the bottom. So the beginning and the end come back together, and you're going to pull that thread nice and tight, so you're still working with the same thread. None of the other threads have come out yet. And you're going to go around once, twice, and then 3 times, really tight. You cannot pull it tight enough at this stage. And then we're going to start how we finished, with a slip knot. So 1 more slip knot to tie off that thread so it doesn't, all your hard work doesn't unravel. Slide that slip knot up to the base of your loop. Pull it really tight, and there you go, you're done. There's your loop. See you in the next section. Hi, now we are going to be learning how to braid candy stripes. So I have set myself up at my workstation, and I've threaded through my pre-made loop that we did in the last lesson around something that I can pull tension off. So remember, in the first lessons we were looking at using a table or a chair or a door, so that this is the section now when you're ready to make that tension. You thread through your loop and you're off to make your candy stripes. So candy stripes are larger stripes. I tend to make them in centimetre chunks, and they can look like this. So this is slightly larger than a centimetre. They can make really nice, simple but effective friendship bracelets. If you really want lots of pops of colour, they can look really smart. So once you've designed your bracelet and you know how big a section of candy stripes you would like to do, keeping that in mind, away you go really. So I'm going to do little candy stripes and then I'll do larger ones just so you can see. So I'm going to do 1/2 centimetre length ones now, and I'm wrapping around and keeping this is so tight. That's why it's really important that you can work off something that you can really pull lots of tension on. So there's my first section, and then I'm going to pull out my other purple. Candy stripes with these all purple sets can look lovely. They can be really effective, especially if you're using all blues or all greens or something, and they can look lovely. So the way you swap your thread round is you tuck the rest of your threads behind and then you pull out your next chosen colour. It's a bit like putting away your felt tip before you pick out the next one. You've got to put it away to make sure it doesn't get all tangled and messed up in the next section. So I'll do that swap over slowly now for you. So this is laid flat. I'm picking out my next colour, which I'm going to take this lilac, pulling it out, putting it into my right hand because I'm doing this right-handed. If you're left-handed, you'll do it the other way around. And you'll see here that this is flush up. No lumps, no bumps, no other little threads sticking out. And away I go again on the next section. So making my cute mini candy stripes. And I just think they're so adorable. Again, like I was saying, if you have lots of different colours, you can make it a really nice ombre effect by doing this colourway. I always give, you'll see me, give my threads like a bit of a squidge before I swap my colour over. By doing that, I'm just making sure that they're nice and tight. And you can see I'm starting to get a little bit of a sheen along the top. If you're wanting to help that along, you can give it a little roll in your fingers. And then I'm going along my last colour. So that is nice mini candy stripes there. You can repeat this at any size. I like 1/2 centimetre or centimetre size ones, particularly for the size of item that we're making of bracelets. They tend to work quite well and you can get a good selection of all the colours in there. And they just look lovely. And a way, remember, to make sure you've got the tension is that if I let go of this hand and just held it, it's not going to flop down. It's going to stay nice and stiff. Perfect. That way we know we're going to get longevity out of our bracelet. And as we're wearing and tearing, we're not going to get the little bumps of thread sticking through. So that is candy stripes. Okay, so now I'm going to be showing you how to do our kiss-cross. Everybody loves this. Here are some I've made earlier. So this is the one here in our Golden Lotus colourways, and I've taken the glitter thread that's in that pack and taken it down over the silver, and it looks so effective. And then here it is with the black over the lilac, and it looks gorgeous. And then here's another one, but it's a bit more of a subtle way. So this is our pastel unicorn colour set, and I've taken 2 different colour threads. So I've taken the blue and the mint down over the yellow, and it just looks so pretty. Now you can do a whole bracelet in this kiss cross. You've just got to be super careful to keep those threads really nice and taut so that they don't slack off as the wear and tear goes on, and they stay looking beautiful for years. Okay, so here we go. What we're going to do is tuck away, as per with all of our other videos and lessons, tuck away the last threads that we have been using. Just going to move those to the side. And then we are going to decide the colour we're going to do the kiss crosses with. So I'm going to take this nice purple, and you're going to flip them out, up and over and out the way. So you kind of want to forget about them. I'm going to take 2 different colours, but I'm taking the 2 dark purples from this set so that they'll show up nicely. but I love the kind of subtle shading and contrast that taking two colours out does. So just flipping those up out the way, and you'll see here I'm taking them flush up next to those colour set that we just last used. So those threads we just last used, taking them all the way up and over. Now underneath, I'm going to use the cream because I want the contrast against these dark colours. So we're going to do a light background and then mid to dark crisscross over the top. So this is a bit tricky because you're kind of working with 5 threads at once. So tuck back into the pile the last threads that you were using. Then with the thread that's going to be your base colour for your crisscross, you're going to bring that out. And you're in your same hand position that you are with everything else. So if you're right-handed, braiding with your thread in your right hand here, holding with the left, and vice versa if it's the other way around. Now your first few wraps round are a little bit tricky because you want to be flush up against the last colour set that you used, whilst keeping out the 2 threads that you want to then wrap round for your crisscross. So I tend to do just 3 or 4 wraps round, and then I give them a little roll and a squidge up to make sure that that's sitting nice and flush and that there's no inner of the bracelet able to show here, because that can make a weak joint sometimes in your bracelet. So you need to make sure you can't kind of see inside your bracelet at this joint. And if you're good to go, wrap all the way down for how long you'd like this section to be, rolling, squeezing all the time to make it nice and strong and shiny. Sometimes these can kind of want to get stuck in and you have to keep flipping them back up and out of the way. Roll and squidge. You'll see I say that a lot. I think if you can just remember roll and squidge, strong and shiny, see it's starting to get shiny, then you'll be an excellent braided friendship bracelet maker. There we go. So that's the background. Now with this thread that we've used, we're just going to pinch this here in our left hand. We haven't tucked it fully away yet, but we're just pinching it there. Do not let go because everything could unravel. Now I'm going to go with a slightly darker thread first, and you're going to pull it down and wrap around at an angle with your gaps, and each one of these wrap rounds is going to make your crisscross. So I'm going to get, if we spin it around, it looks gorgeous, about 3 to 4 crisscrosses on there, and you want to pull that nice and tight so it's not slack or baggy. And then we go round in the opposite direction with the other thread, making sure that we've got that nice and lined up. Now you're at the bottom and everything is tucked into this left hand. Let me move this camera slightly for you. Everything's tucked into here. So this hand is now pinching all of the threads that run through the bracelet and those 3 threads that we've just used. So you're going to swap those to your other hand and you're going to take out a colour. I like to call this like you're sealing it in. So I'm going to seal all of that in with this nice pale lilac here. I think it's such a pretty colour. And you're going to take this out. Now where you've got so many colours out of your main chunk of colours, this bit can be a bit tricky. So you want to make sure there's no knots in these colours, and you're going to pull this colour all the way up nice and flush. Don't be afraid to really pull. And then you're going to wrap around and seal all of those 3 colours in and wrap around a few times. I tend to do 1/2 centimetre here to just seal in that crisscross into place. And then roll and squidge. And there you go. You have your crisscross. It looks gorgeous. And you could do that if you wanted in a few different colour chunks down your bracelet, and it will look lovely. So now we're going to be braiding skinny stripes. So these are our candy stripes, and we've done those in 1/2 centimetre and centimetre chunks. Now skinny stripes, you're going to use 2 threads side by side flush to make the stripe effect. So first off, you're going to tuck away the colour that you've last been using, And my advice for you doing skinny stripes is to use 2 contrasting colours, so a light and a dark, or 2 opposite colours on the colour chart, to make them really pop and show. Otherwise, if you use 2 that are quite tonally the same, they're going to merge into each other. So we're tucking away the thread that we've just been using back into the rest of the threads, and we're taking out the 2 threads that we're using. And now you might want to kind of flush them through your fingers a little bit to make sure that they are laying side by side. And then you're going to wrap them round. Now I'd go really slow to begin with to make sure that they are laying directly next to each other. You want to be pulling a little bit harder and keeping that tension a little bit more, but equally working a little bit more kind of not on top of each other. And then what you do is give it a little roll and a gentle squeeze up to close any gaps. That way you get your nice, neat, skinny stripes, and they look lush. And they're a really nice way. If you're doing an ombre one, you could do 1 centimetre of skinny stripes in between your other colours just to break it up tonally, and it can look divine. You could even do a whole bracelet just in 2 colours and do a whole bracelet of skinny stripes. I think that looks really effective. It looks really nice as well as an anklet, or if you're making a few to stack. Now you want to make sure that they're all equal. So you see here they're slightly larger. It's because I haven't rolled and squidged that section. So it just needs a little bit of teasing out with the fingers to make sure they're laying next to each other and are nice and flush. And then at the end, give them a little roll in your fingers to get that shine going and that strength. So if it's shiny, you know it's going to be strong. It's a really good sign if it's got that nice sheen down the middle. And there you go. There are your gorgeous skinny stripes. Okay, so now we've fastened off the end of our bracelet, we are going to add the beads on. Now beads are optional. You don't need to put beads on the end. It doesn't make a difference to the strength or longevity of your bracelet. I think they look super cute, and you can also use them as a way to tie your bracelets like we mentioned back at the beginning. Here's some here with beads on the end, and I just think that's a nice way to stop and finish your bracelet. If you don't want to add beads, you'd stop here, add your charm, and then skip on to the next video. But if you are going to add beads, I'm going to show you a super quick and easy trick to add them on. So take a piece of your cotton thread and fold it in half. Give it a little roll between your fingers to make it pokey, and take your bead. And you're going to poke it through your beads, slide it down, and open up the end. Next, you're going to take hold of your bracelet and pull every thread through. Then slide your bead, this is the really smart bit, up, and then pull all the other threads through. And that's it. That is how you add your bead on. Give it a squidge over the end just to hide any little loose ends that might be there, neaten up your work, and that's it. You have now added your bead on. If you're not going to add a charm on, you would just tie a simple knot in half, like so. Any little strays of thread that may pull through, just tease them out, and we'll snip those off in a minute. And pull that up to the top there, snipping off your loose ends, because we like to keep it nice and neat as we're going along. And that is it. You have added your bead on. So now we are going to add our charm on, and just like we did that nifty trick by folding the piece of thread in half for the bead, we're going to do the same with the charm, but this time we're going to use a thread attached to the end of our bracelet. We're going to take it, bend it in half, give it a little twirl to make it pokey, take your charm, and you're going to thread that through the end of the loop at the top of your charm and pull through, and then you're going to unpull that half, and your charm is now on your bracelet. It's such an easy way of doing it. Then what you do is you take your threads in half again. But you want to make sure your charm doesn't sort of slack down, and keep it nice and neat and flush up to the top. So you might want to angle it at a bit of a slant so that gravity kind of pulls it down to the knot. And that can be really helpful, especially if you're doing this on your own. Or you can place your finger here and then tie your knots. Remember, you're tying all your threads in half and pulling them through. So everything in half, and then you're going to pull it all the way up to the end. So remember, we've already done half a slip knot here underneath the bead. Then we added the charm and then completed the knot with your final half a slip knot. And that is your charm added to the end of your bracelet. It looks super cute. Now, if you wish, you can just leave as a tassel here at the end of your bracelet and tie it with the loose threads like so. Or watch the next video and we're going to make a plaited tassel just like these ones here to tie through the end of your bracelet. Now these are handy if you want like an extender for your bracelets. See you in the next video. Okay, so now we're going to make our plaited tassel, and these are a great way to use them as an extender at the end of your bracelet and a way to tie your bracelet off. Divide the colours that you've got left at the end after you've trimmed away all the shorter bits and odds and ends into 3 chunks, and we're just going to do a really tight plait. So I'm going over here. You can plait under, either or works well here. And I would say, especially for your first bracelet, I would plait as much as you possibly can that you have left here, as a way to practice tying your bracelets off and just getting into the dexterity of practicing with these techniques. Now, once you've plaited down, I like to do a few inches just to help. If you're wanting to turn your bracelets into an anklet, here is a great way to add that extender. You want to do about 3 to 4 inches. Oh, I'm plaiting off camera. Hang on, let me just scan that down. Then you want to pull out one thread, just like we did when we were making the bracelet. So choose the thread that you want to tie your plaited tassel off with, and we're going to go over and through, so a little slip knot, and we're going to place our finger where we want that to stop at the end of our plait and pull it into place nice and tight. Now we're going to do 4 of those, each flush underneath each other. So over and through, place your finger where you want that to stop, slide it up a little bit, help it into place so it looks nice and neat. And we're going to do another 2, so over and through, place the finger to hold it into place, and then 1 more. Ooh. Over and through. Again, finger in place, pull it nice and tight, and then give it a little trim. So you can trim off all the other bits of your leftover thread. It makes a cute little stubby tassel. It's really, really sweet. And there we go. We have the end of your bracelet all finished off. And you're going to use this, just like on this one here, to pop through the end, to extend and to tie your bracelet or turn it into an anklet. This is quite a good trick as well, because if you're making it for a friend and not too sure on their size of their wrist, this extender will make sure it's definitely going to fit them. Then lots of people like to take this tassel, once it's on, wrap it over and through, pull it up, and there we go. It's not going anywhere, and then you get a cute little tassel too.